So without further ado, we're now going to be watching Mother's Basement's best anime of all time first, and then worst anime of all time. Go subscribe to his channel and watch his main stuff too. Give credit where credit is due. And hopefully the volume is good. If not, just let me know, and I have no problem adjusting it or anything like that. And I'm going to be pausing the video and just not watching it all the way through and giving my 2 cents about it.
10 years is a long time to be doing anything, but for the last decade, I've had the incredible fortune to be doing my favorite thing: analyzing, gushing over, roasting, and recommending anime for you fine folks at home. Yet somehow, in all that time, I've never just sat down and laid out my picks for the best anime ever. I've talked favorites, shows that changed me personally, and even the best of one specific genre that I've definitely seen too much of. But
probably isekai.
The greatest of all time? I always felt like I just hadn't seen enough to definitively make that kind of call. After a decade of watching anime like it is literally my job, though, I've realized I probably never will. There's just too much, and I was simply using that impossible standard as an excuse to avoid laying my cards on the table and facing ultimate judgment for my ultimate tastes. No longer. There's never been a better time. I've been at this 10 years, absorbing great anime and honing my critical faculties, and after all of that, plus a lifetime of fandom before it, these are the 10 greatest anime that I have ever had the pleasure of watching on television or a...
Okay, so this isn't just a definitive list, this is his opinion, which makes sense, of course. So with that, I guess we can kind of judge his list as it goes down. And knowing him, I've watched, not for 10 years, but I've watched his channel, so definitely probably at least 1 or 2 isekais are going to be on here.
Simulcast streaming platform. OVAs and movies? We'll get to some other time. But first, we've been doing this 10 years now, so you know the drill. It's time for a word from our sponsor, Goddess of Victory Nikkei. But now it's time for me to dive into this list, and I think it's only fitting to start the same way I started this channel.
Okay, I've never seen Baccano, but I've heard a lot of good things about it. I still have to go give it a watch.
I first brought home my Baccano thin pack from Indigo Books in the summer of 2009. It instantly shot up to the top of my all-time favorite list and became my go-to pick for every subsequent anime night with the bros. In all my 16 years of life, I had never seen anything even remotely as cool as this supernatural gangland action romp, and even after spending twice that long on this planet, watching at least 50 times as many anime and replacing almost every other entry in my favorites twice over, it's still on the list. I know I said this wouldn't just be a video about my personal faves, and trust me, it's not. But I do think that that staying power speaks to an essential quality at the heart of Baccano, or rather, many essential qualities layered on top of each other. Makoto Yoshimori's bombastic big band jazz soundtrack sets the tone and time period perfectly, while art director Akira Ito brings Ryogo Narita's quirky vision of 1930s New York to vibrantly realized and well-researched life. Also, director Takahiro Omori can fill it with some of the goriest, most bloody, awesome deaths in all of anime.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, I think the whole point of the series is it's however many episodes and each is a standalone, trying to get back to the first episode.
All of which stick, no matter how sticky they might be. Then, Tyler Walker's meticulously researched, slang-laden script and masterfully directed accent-heavy dub complete the spell, molding all those quintessentially Japanese components into an immersively authentic American period piece. Inarguably one of the greatest works of localization in animation history. But the original Japanese screenwriter, Noboru Takagi, performed an even more magical act of transformation. See, Baccano is a very good series of light novels, an unconventional epic spanning years and eventually centuries, as it follows the exploits of various immortals who've integrated themselves into the American public, and in particular, its mafia.
I've also heard that for even a lot of purist would be the word I would use here, where people are like, only sub, I only watch anime and sub. A lot of them who heard this dub are like, this is one of the only series that the dub is better. It could very well be just because it's all placed in America.
Saga jumps back and forth between different time periods and character perspectives from book to book, but the books themselves are basically linear. Brains Base's anime, on the other hand, takes the building blocks of the first 3 volumes and jumbles them up, rebuilding them into a complex, non-linear narrative maze in the vein of Memento, Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and especially Snatch. The OP alone is a testament to that particular influence. It does this with a brilliant reframing device, showing the plot through the eyes of 2 eccentric journalists working to unravel a tangled web of interconnected events and characters long after the fact, almost any one of whom could be the protagonist depending on the angle their article takes. And so each episode shows us a different angle on those events, gradually revealing what makes each of these charmingly quirky goons tick and why exactly some of them won't stop ticking, no matter how much lead ends up in their diet. And the way that this slow drip feed of information keeps you hooked from episode to episode, keeps you guessing as to who's up to what and what's gonna happen next, or before in some cases, is so effective, it's honestly hard to believe the story wasn't always meant to be told that way. The rest of the production is plenty impressive too, and of course it wouldn't work at all if the original characters from the light novels weren't already so damn compelling and entertaining, and Isaac and Miria, holy what, just the greatest.
So I also want to just interrupt real quick, but a lot of other, let's say, big Anitubers, all of them, this is kind of what they put on a top 10 list. So if it's that good, probably really do have to think of giving it a try and a watch.
In terms of pure screenwriting flexes, Baccano is one of the most brilliant adaptations ever penned, if not the most. A must-watch for anyone who enjoys puzzles or mysteries, especially with a spot of the old ultra-violence. On that.
But I'm surprised if it's so popular, or maybe it is only one of those anime that's more popular in America than in Japan, because if it is a light novel series, I wonder why the rest of it didn't get adapted.
That note.
Full Metal Alchemist.
I agree with this one. It's also hard, even if you look at my anime list or something like that. I view this as the gateway anime, either version really.
Full Metal Alchemist.
In a world where anyone with a stick of chalk, a steady hand, and a mind for math can tear anything down to its base atoms and rebuild it as they see fit, you can kind of see how some young science whiz kids might let that power go to their heads a bit. Maybe start thinking the only reason that all their textbooks keep saying, do not under any circumstances do alchemy on human bodies, is because no one as smart as them has tried yet.
And also, I mean, it showed in the little title card he made, but in 2000, yeah, it came out in 2003, and 22 years later, people are still referencing it and talking about it and making memes about it. I think the live action movies just finished too, or that might have been Rurouni Kenshin, but it is lots of fond memories with the show. Very good show overall.
So when their mom comes down with a bad case of anime mom disease while dad's out getting milk for 3 years, they think, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Thus, chastened for their hubris, the brothers Elric make a solemn vow to only ever do alchemy on human bodies one more time, but live ones this time, specifically their own, in order to get them back. And they're not taking any chances. After studying up to join the state alchemists, researchers granted vast resources in exchange for serving their nation in times of war, which is a lot of times, because I'm not entirely sure, but I think there were talks of them remastering the show and doing it again. But I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I
read or heard that somewhere recently.
Said nation is a wee bit fashy. They set out to unlock the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone, a mystical elixir said to bypass all limits of alchemy, not yet realizing that the truth will shake them and the entire world to the core. Watching the masterfully designed domino chain of clues and revelations that Hiromu Arakawa laid out across her original manga collapse into each other might just shake you to your core as well.
And this was also back in the day when watching anime, they would basically adapt it while the manga was still going out. And that's why there's Full Metal Alchemist 2003 and Brotherhood, because 2003 the series finished before the manga was done. But they got the creator to kind of make a makeshift ending until Brotherhood came out, which is why they redid it.
To this day, I hold FMA up as the gold standard for how to construct a satisfying, long-form epic fantasy plot and tie it all together at the end with a neat little bow.
I would say Full Metal Alchemist, Death Note, and Code Geass are like three, especially in the early 2000s, quintessential anime you should watch.
But it's not just an epic fantasy, it's also a shonen power fantasy, and Full Metal Alchemist equally excels in that regard. Alchemy is one of, if not the most ingenious power system in all of shonen.
I think Hunter x Hunter and One Piece still has that beat, but it was very creative.
With easy to understand rules that clearly define what it can and can't do, a
True.
ton of potential for inventive animation, and an underlying elegance to the concept that excites the imagination endlessly. But it's not just great for those reasons.
Also, openings are bangers. I mean, still great music as well. It was really early 2000. I still think is the golden age of anime.
It's also a philosophically rich world-building premise that predicates FMA's entire setting and story on the zero-sum principle of equivalent exchange.
True.
The idea that mankind can never gain something without sacrificing something of equal value in return. Also that the entire rest of the series can then thoroughly deconstruct that assumption and reconstruct it into a potent argument for the multiplicative power of mutual cooperation.
In those days, we really believed that to be the world's one and only truth.
And in that spirit, as you may have surmised from the title card, I'm ranking both Full Metal Alchemist anime together in this spot, because
both are equally as good. And in some ways, I actually prefer 2003 over Brotherhood. I know that's probably more of a weird take, but I thought both were great. I mean, they got the voice actors for the same series twice, and say what you want about the guy who voiced Ed, but I still like them, and I still enjoy the series. And I was actually thinking about rewatching it too.
I don't believe that either one of them is truly complete without the other. Obviously, the 2003 version lacks that incredible ending and most of the equally masterful journey that leads up to it, as by the time it hit the air, Bones only had like 19 episodes worth of monthly manga story to work with in their 51 episode show. But 2009's Brotherhood reboot was likewise made with the expectation that its viewers would be fans of that original anime, because it was a huge hit that kind of single-handedly saved Bones from going under back in the day, and everyone really loved it. And so
it's also the studio that, I mean, like he was saying, became big names like My Hero Academia, I think Fairy Tail, a bunch of other super popular anime after this.
Its rush to recap everything from the original anime up to the split, Brotherhood ends up utterly fumbling some of the most important early arcs, undermining powerful moments of horror and tragedy, and straight up neglecting to introduce a pretty important recurring character.
And I think 2003 was a lot darker as well, if I remember correctly. Knowing the ending of Brotherhood, the ending of 2003 wasn't bad either, because there was a tie-in movie after that, which kind of satisfied in a lot of ways looped back around to how Brotherhood 1 would end, essentially.
The original series just does a much better job of getting you acquainted with its characters and world, and if I'm being honest, it does a better job of sucking me into that world too, with its atmospheric use of color and mood lighting, and its more cinematic approach to animation and storyboarding. Brotherhood is certainly much more visually accurate to the style of the manga, but that doesn't necessarily make it better as an anime, though undeniably, it's got some pretty incredible Sakuga moments. And on top of
And for those who don't know, Sakuga is just another word for like high class or high tier Japanese animation.
that, while the anime original answers O3 comes up with to Arakawa's mysteries are obviously nowhere near as perfectly, elegantly satisfying as what Brotherhood would ultimately deliver, the twists still absolutely rip and make an impressive amount of sense given what they had to work with back then. Plus, the way O3 is structured to set up those twists and answers with filler episodes long before the split point in the story makes them feel like integral parts of the show instead of just something they pulled out of their ass as soon as they ran out of manga.
Again, that was also because they had the creator working side by side, essentially, which, I mean, still happens to this day. I mean, what was the manhwa that just came out? Be the Beginning or whatever? I mean, or even One Piece still has Oda at least overseeing the episode, so that hasn't changed over the course of 20 years or so.
Anime original endings go, it's just about the best to ever do it. And I think everyone would have been pretty well satisfied with the original FMA if Brotherhood's plot hadn't turned out to be so damn perfect. I honestly don't know if I'll ever sort my feelings out as to which FMA is definitively better. I'd probably need to make a whole other video and rewatch both of them just to figure it out. But regardless, they both can stand confidently, especially beside each other, among the best anime ever. And I know that's gonna frustrate some folks who see Brotherhood especially as overrated after the decade and a half it spent atop the MAL rankings, but sorry, it is simply the nature of goats to dominate.
It's truly, again, the gateway anime. Then probably Death Note, Cowboy Bebop. And when I say gateway anime, it's definitely an anime where I could show anybody and a person to take it seriously and not, oh, this is just crazy, stupid stuff.
Do that, I'll come running.
So real quick, I have Ping Pong the animation there, all the way on the left. So I'm just saying, when you read the description of this video, I'm not Mother Basement level anime expert, but I like to think I at least know a little bit of what I'm talking about. We'll see what he says when he says the worst animes of all time, but so far, I can't really complain too much about this list. Everything seems pretty legit so far.
All the way from Planet Ping Pong.
Sports anime tend to tell inspirational, hype-generating stories about self-improvement, teamwork, and camaraderie,
But I will say, animation art direction-wise, Ping Pong is the coolest looking sports anime. But I think the best sports anime is Hajime no Ippo.
Giving your all for the love of the game. Even in the downer moments where our heroes stand defeated, it's usually because the other guys worked even harder or maybe cheated a little. And in darker stories where they give too much of themselves and face injury or self-annihilation for their efforts, there's still almost always a sense that on some level it was worth it, that their sacrifice meant something. Ping Pong the animation is not that anime.
I also think these guys worked on the Devilman Crybaby series, but I could be wrong, but it is a very similar animation style.
About how some guys can give everything they have and more to something they love and get absolutely nothing in return. About how some people are simply born so good they can squander their talents for years just kind of messing around and still walk all over those other guys after just a few months of effort. It speaks to the indescribable euphoria of reaching the absolute pinnacle of human excellence with your own two hands and then says, sorry, bud, that's not for you.
That Ping Pong with the match with that bald guy, the dragon or whatever, that was some crazy cool animation.
Doesn't matter how bad you want it, life's just not fair.
But I would say this anime is for sports anime, it's kind of the artistic. If you're a big artsy fan, ping pong, the animation is for you.
To Hoshino!
Which certainly doesn't mean don't do what you love, but rather do it because you love it. Don't get hung up on where you think maybe you can go. Learn to enjoy the journey there. Other sports anime sell a fun fantasy that can get you out of bed in the morning, but Ping Pong shows us how to live in our own harsh reality after we're up and moving.
And to be honest, it is, not the prettiest anime to watch. It's more of a realistic style. So it is a little rough to get used to if you're not used to that type,
It's a captivatingly beautiful portrayal of some very ugly truths about life. And the animation style reflects that brilliantly. Deeply unflattering caricatures rendered in rough, raw line art, squashing and stretching, acting and emoting with little regard for realism or the comfort of the viewer. It would be a very difficult anime to
Yeah, that guy was super cool.
if it weren't so hard to look away from. For every movement is packed with explosive, expressive energy. Every shot composed with the eye of a virtuoso. With Masaaki Yuasa's masterful storyboarding, every scene of every episode of Ping Pong makes me want to throw my hands up Scorsese style. And it's more
I wouldn't say absolute cinema, but it is very good.
than merely cinematic. By fully leaning into the strengths of digital animation, breaking away from the traditionally entrenched analog view of what anime is supposed to look like, Yuasa and his cohort at Tatsunoko Production and the newly founded Science Saru gave us a manga come alive, the faded, sketchy characters fitting right into a world inseparable from the paper it's drawn on, while the shots that tell their story split themselves into panels in real time. Art director A. Merrick Kevin flexing the experimental muscles he'd one day use to help shape the looks of Spider-Verse and Arcane. And I know
Also haven't seen Arcane. I don't know if that's worth it, but a lot of people also enjoy that as well.
I just got through saying that accurately emulating a manga doesn't always make for a better anime, but that's
True.
not quite what Yuasa's doing here. He's blending the strengths of the two mediums, co-opting visual language from the source material and combining it with cinematic grammar to tell a story in a way that's only possible with animation. I think if, say, Chainsaw Man had taken a similar approach instead of going all in on production values and cinematic direction, its anime could have been as transcendental as
Speaking of Chainsaw Man, the movie's coming out, I think this October.
the original manga, instead of merely being very, very good. Which brings us to our obligatory Shonen Jump thing.
Jujutsu Kaisen, while great animation-wise, especially in the Tokyo Disaster or Tokyo District arc, I think it's just a poor Bleach knockoff. But I understand with just how popular it is why it would be on this list, but I would not put this. I don't think even in my top 20.
4 years and 1 week ago, I declared Jujutsu Kaisen to be peak shonen anime. And many a time since then, I've been asked if I still stand by that statement. Here's your answer. Yes, even though I've read all of Hunter x Hunter since then, and even though the manga had kind of a weak epilogue after it got done running one of the craziest final battles in genre history for an entire straight year. Because we're not talking
I will say I haven't read the manga, so that might change my opinion, but maybe I'm just the type of person, if it's too super popular, I'm not interested in it.
talking about manga today, but even if we were, it'd still be top 10 easy. It's got 2 of my top 3 shonen arcs of all time, right below Chimera Ant, and both of them were recently adapted into the most insanely gorgeous single season of battle anime goodness arguably ever.
How do I want to word this? I think the reason why Jujutsu Kaisen is so popular is because it has a super amazing art style. If it was made 10, 20 years ago with kind of like a maybe Naruto level animation or like a Dragon Ball, it wouldn't be nearly as popular. but because it was released at the right time, everybody loves it.
Arguable, because I know that some folks out there prefer the polished digital compositing look of Ufotables.
I also think Demon Slayer is overrated, but I can't deny the animation is beautiful, but Fate series is better.
But if we're talking just pure animation excellence, JJK Season 2 alone has more cuts up on Sakugaboru than all 4 seasons of Demon Slayer combined.
I guess the question is really, what makes the greatest anime for you? Is it animation? Is it story? Is it the characters? I mean, is it just the feelings you get while watching it? That's the real question of the day.
Shibuya Incident is just fight after fight after fight, where the choreography, camera work, character acting, music, sound design, and script are all firing on more cylinders than anyone thought would even fit in the engine.
And it was peak, but again, not 10 out of 10. I'd say a solid 7 or 8. Still really good, but overhyped.
Hurtling around a roller coaster track of crazy plot twists, devastating gut punches, and flashes of insane hype that burn all the brighter for the darkness that surrounds them as it puts its heroes through the ringer to end all ringers. And that's the weaker part of the season, coming on the tail end of hidden inventory premature death, a profoundly moving coming-of-age tragedy conveyed through surreal, dreamlike direction and production values consistently on par with animated feature films, which
I actually still like the Shibuya Incident a lot better, but that was just me.
Which is actually going to be re-released as a feature film at the end of this month and will almost certainly top the Japanese box office for the year after it does, because it's the extra super duper yaoi part of JJK, and Fujo bucks make the shonen battle world go round. Director Shota Goshizono had a lot to prove stepping in to fill the shoes of WebGen Wonderkun Sung-Hoo Park for this second season, and he filled them with unrivaled vigor, holding the ship together through reportedly the most turbulent production in Studio Mappa's history, and refusing to let his work ride on the quality of the source material alone.
And I mean, with Studio Mappa in general, they've been known, or there's lots of controversy surrounding it. They did the final season of Attack on Titan, Chainsaw Man, and Jujutsu Kaisen all around the same time. That's also another thing to keep in mind, I guess, when watching shows, if you care about how the staff are treated or the people who actually work on it.
Gege Akutami does also deserve quite a lot of credit for how well this adaptation's turned out so far. In author notes and Q&As, he frequently admits to envisioning the series as an anime first, composing his pages with an eye for how they'll ultimately be animated. Think of how the Choso bathroom brawl came preloaded with reference material from the raid, and structuring his fights and arcs with episodes, seasons, and the occasional movie in mind, building around natural breakpoints to make the screenwriter's job easier. Gege's scene-oriented storytelling also comes part and parcel with a show-don't-tell approach to plot and character development that makes this anime immensely rewarding to rewatch and analyze, revealing hidden depth and nuance in almost every interaction, combat, or conversation for anyone who cares to look. And hey, if you like navel-gazing anime that make you think about stuff, we got more where that came from.
Yeah, because that is definitely not Jujutsu Kaisen, but now we're talking. Now this is truly a top 10.
Neon Genesis Evangelion was a dream project born from a nightmare. Coming off the back of Nadia's Secret of Blue Water, one of the most titanic production disasters in the history of the anime industry, Hideaki Anno, prodigy of the otaku generation, protege of the OG GOAT, fell into a deep, years-long depression. But he got the chance to claw his way back out when an executive from King Records handed him and Studio Gainax an unprecedented opportunity.
But also, apparently while working on it, though, he hated himself and he hated his life and he wanted to end it. But finally, after finishing it, I guess those feelings slowly went away until he started working on the Rebuild movies, and then it came back. So he doesn't really want anything to do with this series anymore. which is why he's getting into Godzilla and Gundam.
An open time slot to do with as they pleased. Anno got to work building a world and story drawing from his biggest inspirations, approaching the fantastical giant magic guy versus alien kaiju dynamics of Ultraman and old school super robot shows with the immersive sci-fi realism of Gundam and Macross.
He also did, I think it's called Moomin Rider as well, which was also a somewhat recent movie. But his most recent work, I think, is that new Gundam series out now.
Blending in the existential bleakness of Space Runaway Ideon, the apocalyptic tone and
Spear of Longitis,
Devilman, the skin-tight battle suits of Super Sentai, but like way hornier, the futurist set design of 2001: A Space Odyssey, but like way hornier, ideas and imagery from basically every anime Anno himself had ever worked on, and dozens more references, homages, and thematic riffs aside. But it wasn't just Anno's interests that got poured into this new anime. It was also his own trauma. Drawing on Freudian psychology, he patterned the core trio of Asuka, Shinji, and Rei on his own id, ego, and superego, and very intentionally built every other character in the core cast from bits and pieces of himself and the people he knew. And
I gotta pull something up real quick. So the channel is Timberwolf Studios. So he does a super breakdown of essentially each episode and then each character's act throughout the series. Highly recommend.
As the project progressed, he kept writing and rewriting scripts right up to the last deadline for basically every episode, leaning further away from the epic story of big robots beating up aliens as it went on, and
also going bankrupt at least 2 or 3 times, and maybe money laundering, if I remember correctly, but they were doing some crazy stuff over at Gainax.
Deeper into his own psychology through a decidedly Jungian exploration of the collective unconscious, culminating in a finale set inside the author insert hero's own fucked up head that brilliantly recontextualizes reused animation as his own memories confronting him, breaking the characters down to the point we start seeing them from the other side of their animation cells.
これは僕だ僕を他人に見せている形これもみんな僕を表すものに過ぎない
To watch Ava and its film sequels is to be a fly on the wall at the single most expensive and extravagant art therapy session in human history, witnessing breakdowns and breakthroughs in real time as a generational genius grapples with the paralysis of depression, the way his otaku passions both define and confine him, his complicated relationship with his abusive father, our paradoxical and universal needs for mutual recognition and self-definition, and how they tie into our shared innate drive towards self-annihilation, plus a whole fuckload of sexual hang-ups, ultimately arriving at the answer that he's simply got to learn to love himself. But that's going to take a while, so maybe we should pick this up again in a year or two, and then maybe go over it from the beginning in a decade or so. And
you know, it was still good, the Rebuild movies. I wouldn't say it's necessarily worth watching, only if you're a fan. I guess a diehard fan.
Every couple years after that, but it looks like he was feeling sad again, so he took a bit of a walk, went to his cool senpai's place to play with toy planes for a bit.
For those who don't know, that is Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli. Great Godzilla movie as well.
Godzilla, and now, oh, look at the time. It's 9 years later. Whoops. But turns out, going outside, spending time with your friends and hot wife, pretty good for you. So, more of that, less animating, maybe no more animating. Gonna go make a Kamen Rider now. And
Kamen Rider, not Moomin Rider, my bad.
More than all the dense layers of deep-cut nerd passion and even deeper-cut Christian lore, it's this raw, painfully honest, introspective side of Evangelion that makes it so endlessly, enduringly compelling. In the modern age of industrial consumer art, you just don't see shows getting made that are this brilliantly directed, this immaculately polished, this boldly experimental, and this far up their own ass.
And I would also say kind of how Jujutsu Kaisen couldn't be made back in the day. I think this is one of the series that definitely could not be made today, I don't think people would really give this a chance or really enjoy it that much.
And I mean that as the highest possible compliment. The purpose of art is to express the things deep inside us that words alone cannot describe. And Evangelion does that with style and panache and unrivaled mastery of analog animation as a medium, and the second coolest giant robots ever. As for the first, though,
I mean, this was probably one of the first true anime I fell in love with. Big Gurren Lagann fan.
Neon Genesis Evangelion and Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann are two sides of the same coin, and not
a lot of people who worked on Evangelion went to work on, or maybe this was Studio Gainax, which then turned to Studio Trigger. Either way, huge fan of both works.
just because they're both lavishly produced super robot throwbacks with made-up words in their titles about kids with confidence issues fighting cosmic horrors, directed by Gainax's two most iconic, enduring, and horny ex-employees. Eva demonstrates what's possible artistically and cinematically when an entire multi-million-dollar anime production pipeline submits wholeheartedly to the vision and whims of a singular auteur, whereas Gurren shows us what can be done by a team with similar creative freedom working independently toward a shared vision, each artist believing wholeheartedly in the director who believes in them. Hiroyuki Imaishi conceived the Gurren project as a narrative-driven animation showcase that would give industry veterans and newbies alike a chance to flex and experiment, similar to Gainax's beloved and groundbreaking OVA Fooly Cooly.
Another great series, but Gurren Lagann, it could have been made 20 years ago and it could be made 20 years from now. It is still a great story.
But way, way bigger. The biggest ever. The result is an anime every bit as dense as Evangelion, but
there was also, if you've heard of another channel called Death Battle, they just did one where it was Gurren Lagann versus a White Lantern. You know, not going to spoil anything, but
in a less thinky, more feely sort of way. A show that's abnormally inconsistent from episode to episode, scene to scene, and even shot to shot, as each animator and director leaves their own distinct creative stamp on their piece of the greater whole. Layers upon layers of artists building on and around each other's interpretations and ideas with a light but firm directorial touch, ensuring that it all fits together, not quite seamlessly, but cohesively. The seams themselves becoming their own beautiful part of the bigger picture.
Also, there's movies after the series as well, which kind of repackages, if you didn't like how the animation looked in the TV series, takes it up even more than what they did in that.
I honestly think the toughest part of pulling this whole list together was choosing where to rank Imaishi's work relative to Anno's. They're both equally accomplished artists, but with such vastly different approaches that it feels almost impossible to compare. One characterized by meticulously thoughtful introspection that
I would say Evangelion is for the thinker, and then Gurren Lagann is for the bros.
Invites endless analysis and essay writing, while the other embodies a wild, intangible, indescribable energy permeating everything he touches. I also struggled with whether to pick this or Cyberpunk Edgerunners to represent Imaishi's oeuvre.
Edgerunners is also a legitimately great series, again, made by Studio Trigger, who also did BNA and Promare. So, and Delicious Dungeon. Great studio, all of them. I'm a Trigger head, so.
Because on top of being the greatest video game adaptation ever made, and it's not even close,
so true. Very true.
that anime is basically perfect. A masterfully orchestrated tragedy comprising 10 straight 10 out of 10 episodes. And Gurren does have at least that many 10s too, but it's also got a few 9s and maybe even an 8 or 2. So how can I possibly justify choosing something I admit is uneven and flawed over near perfection? Because Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann teaches us we can always reach higher, always be better, always become more.
As far as animes that impacted me, let's say the most in my life, I'm not a big crier, but I cried at the end of Gurren Lagann, and then another one, Mob Psycho. Completely understand, great series.
Drive to improve is baked into our very DNA and the fabric of the cosmos itself. And so long as we have each other's backs and fight like hell to leave the world better than we found it, it is inevitable that humanity will surpass any limitations set before us.
Wait, I got something to show. I have the drill as a keychain. I've had it for years, and then even though it's faded, I have the scissor from Kill la Kill.
Even so-called perfection. If there was ever an 11 out of 10 television finale, it is not Gurren Lagann's climax, cause that shit's a 15. Bro smashed an entire galaxy over the embodiment of pessimism's face. And as I made that choice, I also realized I'm simply too based and faith in humanity pilled to rank Gurren below Eva. Evangelion has a well-earned...
I wouldn't also probably judge his list too harshly, that it's each of these is, it's kind of the problem with 10 out of 10s. If it was a truly like 10 out of 10 list, it would be super hard to rank really anything that you're passionate about, at least in my opinion.
Is the sad smart man's anime, spawner of essays, gazer at walls. While it's all too easy to write Gurren off as simple, dumb fun. But there's nothing simple about making something this fun, especially when it's also packed with so much emotional texture and even tragedy and hardship. And as for dumb, sure, it took a lot of very smart people to get us into space, but we never would have gotten there if we weren't also too stupid to stop trying. Just look what happens when we're too smart to start.
You know, talk about overhype anime. As far as romance goes, I mean, I think I finished the first season. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think this is as great as everyone says it is.
In the student council chambers of Japan's most prestigious private academy,
and then, oh my gosh, when this came out, that the Chica dance was everywhere.
War is raging. President Miyuki Shirogane and Vice President Kaguya Shinomiya are genius elites among the elites, for whom the idea of dating their lessers is unfathomable. Each of them might just consider giving the other the honor of a date or two, though, but only if they ask first. For confessing one's own feelings is an act of submission utterly beneath these intellectual titans. Definitely not just because they're scared of being rejected. Definitely.
It's just a will they, won't they for like 4 seasons.
Stuck at an impassable stalemate.
Well, I guess to be fair, that's any romance show, but
they must each use their incredible mental faculties to trick the other into revealing their hidden feelings in a series of saucy mind games that make L and Light Yagami look simple-minded and romantically incompatible. Kaguya-sama Love is War is an utterly hilarious rom-com built...
And I just realized if he's ranking it top 10, he's ranked this above Gurren Lagann, Evangelion, Jujutsu Kaisen, that is crazy.
Around genuinely complex and strategically fascinating social contests, which only makes the joke funnier. As we reach the only rom-com on this list, and a seinen one to boot, I know some of you will be disappointed.
For those who don't know, seinen is just adult, and then shonen is kids or teenager, or specifically male demographic is shonen, and then shoujo is female demographic.
To note that there aren't any shoujo or josei on here, and you can pretty much directly blame Kaguya for that. See, I set myself a rule to only do one anime per director for the sake of variety, and Mamoru Hatakeyama also happened to direct the best josei I've ever seen, Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, which is also completely goated, but if you put a gun to my head and tell me I can only pick one, obviously I'm choosing the one that inspired me to write an entire feature-length movie about how good it is, and I'm not going to apologize for that.
That is crazy. I didn't know that, but I mean, I guess he's a huge fan of it, right? It is his video and channel after all.
Most of that movie does fixate on Aka Akasaka's genius character writing over any of the strengths of the anime adaptation, but don't take that as any kind of knock against its quality. Here and in Rakugo, Takayama has proven himself to be a master of economical storyboarding, both in the sense that his extremely theatrical shot compositions do a lot of narrative heavy lifting, and that he's really good at squeezing every last yen out of his production budget. In Rakugo, that meant carefully curating high detail close-ups and evocative still shots to build atmosphere and immerse us in each spoken word story, as well as the headspaces of the characters, precisely calculating every moment of motion for maximal cinematic impact. In Kaguya, it means all of that too, but also using every tool at his disposal, digital and traditional alike, and every clever cost-cutting measure he learned in the trenches at Studio Shaft to sell the ever-loving crap out of every last gag.
I will say the art style is nice, and probably another reason why people like this one is because there are just tons of references to various different medias as well.
The original manga was already incredibly funny, but between his direction, the performances of the characters, and the narrator, the anime is utterly hysterical. More than one episode had me laughing so hard I damn near asphyxiated.
Hold on a second. No one will disturb us for 3 hours, and Shinomiya will forget whatever happens? Why have I been given this overly convenient chance to be a scumbag?
The adaptation script is also top-notch in a way that almost mirrors Bakano, taking the scattershot narrative of the source material, structured as a series of isolated episodic gag chapters where we're expected to infer that more story and character development has happened.
He had me in like the first 5 or 6, but he is losing me near the end. I don't think it is nearly that deep as he's making it.
And off screen between the jokes and rearranging it into a more straightforwardly coherent plot, one better suited to a 12-episode full-length series than a short weekly manga. This has the benefit of making the hidden depths of the characters a bit more obvious and accessible early on without giving too much away, but more importantly, it allows the romance to advance at a much faster clip, making it clear from the get-go that despite Kaguya and Miyuki's obstinate posturing, this whole thing is actually going somewhere. The central question is never will they, won't they, but when will they, and also what's taking them so long. The extremely long answer to the latter question makes for a deeply compelling character study and social commentary. See that movie I made for more details. And as for the former, when they finally do, the payoff and aftermath are every bit as emotionally cathartic as they are bust-a-gut hilarious. And the movie makes for a pitch-perfect epilogue to that arc. Besides,
is the series finished then? I thought it was still going on, but I had no idea that there was a movie. So maybe I can't make any promises, but I might give it a watch to see if it's worth it if he's gushing about it so much.
Maybe Fruits Basket, which is an absolute masterpiece of a manga, but whose adaptation is sadly just a little bit lacking in sauce. There is not a single more satisfying love story in all of anime.
Simply not true, but you know.
Though a few of Kaguya's own side stories do come impressively close. We will need to see season 4 for the world at large to fully appreciate just how good Best Girl Ishigami really is, but even if the adaptation never gets there, Kaguya-sama has already cemented its place at the absolute peak of anime ROMs and coms, and especially the conjunction of the two. But while conquering genres is certainly impressive, it's another thing entirely when a work becomes a new genre itself.
Okay, Cowboy Bebop, super awesome. Loved it so much, I refused to watch the live action just because, again, this is one of your gateway anime, and it's influenced even Western culture, be it movies like, or TV series like Firefly, like Outlaw Star did. Iconic.
Bebop arrived at just the right time in anime history, when computers were coming into use to enhance anime productions, but hadn't yet supplanted the analog processes the industry had spent the last 4 decades refining. When studios, network...
And that's kind of the only downsides, I think, to modern animation, is people had to work with what they had. And I mean, just the fact that it's not, and I understand it's completely hard to do, but it's not all hand drawn, as in like they have to use the physical paints and colors and everything like they did. I mean, eventually one day, if I make it big, I want to collect, I think they're called stills, which is the actual page or frames. That's the word I'm looking for. And that they used. They don't make them like they used to.
And producers were willing to take big risks on original IP, even without a toy license to back it up, in hopes of a massive Evangelion-esque payout, when Sunrise and Bandai specifically had plenty of cash to splash around thanks to the Gundam spin-off renaissance ushered in by Mobile Fighter and Wing. On top of that, its 2-core season order hit that perfect 26-episode sweet spot.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is like, it's not based on a manga or anything like that. It's its own original idea and series. I could be wrong, though.
Long enough to tell a more involved story, but short enough for each individual episode to get some real love on the production side. If there has ever been a more consistently beautiful example of traditionally cel-animated television than Bebop, I have yet to see it, and trust me, I have been looking. And
also, just kind of an interesting fact, but it's, okay, this is going to sound completely crazy, but there's an artist named Freddie Dredd, and because of Cowboy Bebop, there was an A&B made of a song called Cha Cha, and that's what helped blow him up. So without that, this rapper wouldn't have a career. So just kind of an interesting little tidbit.
With what Cowboy Bebop aims to accomplish, that polish really matters.
Same also with Suicide Boys and Darling in the Franxx. Another huge popular A&B made a song about it, and then it helped boost their career.
Not just because, ooh, pretty pictures, or the vibes, but because every extra background detail and spaceship cockpit greeble makes its world feel that little bit more real and lived in, while every subtle flourish of character animation makes it feel more alive. This isn't some epic space opera about legendary galactic heroes changing the fates of whole planets with their mighty deeds. It's space jazz, a song of everyday people and their everyday struggles to get by in a big, scary, expensive solar system that couldn't care less if they live or die.
And if you really like Cowboy Bebop, there's another series the director made called Space Dandy that combines basically what Samurai Champloo was and Cowboy Bebop and combined it into one on a space epic.
Heroes aren't heroes at all, just bounty hunters aiming to cash in on the desperation and misfortune of folks even worse off than them. A crew of amoral crooks inspired by the iconic cast of Lupin III, who managed to become every bit as iconic as their inspirations in their own slightly lame ways. Spike Spiegel is the raddest guy you can possibly imagine cooking stale cup ramen on a hot plate, while Faye Valentine is the kind of life-ruining mistake every man dreams of making one day. Each of them is running from their past and toward a murky future, making plenty of stops along the way to catch crooks, avert terrorist plots, play mind games with hackers, get blasted on hallucinogens, and fend off killer clowns and deadly lunch meat in episodic improvisational riffs on genre, tone, and theme.
Which I think for the time too, that was not only just quite unique in TV, but quite unique in anime, where it was each episode didn't just directly relate, they were all independent.
Series director Shinichiro Watanabe spent the first decade of his career working on other people's ideas and quietly filing his own away for the day he'd finally get to spearhead his own project. And when that chance did come, he poured everything he had into this thing. No 2 episodes of Cowboy Bebop are alike, not even the handful of poignantly heavy ones that carry the main stories wait, but each and every one of them is uniquely excellent. From action to romance, horror to comedy, kung fu cinema to film noir, the show switches gears seamlessly without ever missing a beat. But even more striking than Watanabe's versatility as a director is his style. Yoko Kanno's music infuses every moment of Bebop's action as Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed play ship consoles and computer keyboards like instruments, paint pyrotechnic trails across the inky starscape, and dance their way through street fights and shootouts, always a few frantic steps behind their quarry.
And the animation still stands up after all this time, which just shows even back then, with time and dedication, a lot of people can accomplish great things.
Syncopated energy that permeates all of Watanabe's work is, I feel deeply in my soul, what animation is fundamentally all about. It takes something real special to top that.
I'm confused. Who is Srem?
Let's be real, y'all knew this was coming. I have gushed about ReZero over multiple hours worth of video essay, plus the top 10 of a whole other top 10 list where I hailed it as the greatest isekai of all time.
I wouldn't say it's the greatest isekai of all time, but it's definitely top 5. I still think Mizuko Tensei is pretty good. I think, believe it or not, the overly cautious hero is extremely cautious, or however that is. And then, maybe Sword Art Online. It was truly genre defining. I'm sure there's another isekai that's slipping my mind that could be better, but ReZero is definitely up there and good.
And most recently, I turned a critique of Solo Leveling into a stealth ReZero glazing sesh. I glazed this show at every opportunity, and now I'm gonna glaze it some more.
I haven't finished it, but I think I've watched either the start of the second part of season 2. I've definitely maybe 2/3 to halfway through the series so far, and I enjoyed it. I just never finished it because of all the delays it had.
ReZero's story is built on a rock-solid conceptual foundation, a brilliantly executed time loop gimmick sure to please anyone who's ever theory-crafted after watching Groundhog Day, which feeds into brutally effective horror of both the psychological and blood and guts everywhere variety, which in turn serves as the foundation of a savage critique of nerd-oriented power fantasies and male entitlement, although it never lets that fully get in the way of it also being a really clever and fun time loop power fantasy. But ReZero's greatest strength, as an anime at least, is that the people doing the animating clearly adore the source material and are fully committed to doing it justice at all costs.
And I think they made a statement that they are completing it all the way through. Like, they've dedicated basically their production to finishing this series.
It's one of the slowest rolling adaptations I've ever seen in my anime watching career. Only 3 seasons in exactly the same amount of time it's taken My Hero Academia to drop 7, plus 4 movies, and now 1 spin-off. And that's definitely not for lack of demand. Most figure and merch stores over here in Japan have a dedicated REM section, not a ReZero section. I mean, they have that too, but there is a separate, just as big section that is just REM. If
Overrated, but to each their own.
Wanted to, they could be shoveling this shit out and raking money in at record speeds. But White Fox has taken the time to do every season so far right, with feature-length premieres setting the stage for each arc, over-length episodes that run into their own ad time just to give important plot and character beats the room they need to breathe, and top-tier key animators bringing their A game to every key scene. It's a legit...
Yeah, to whichever studio is working on it, it's always been consistent no matter the delay. Okay, so it came out in 2016, and since then, 9 years, and it's only gotten better, and it still pretty much looks the same, if that makes any sense. I mean, they have not altered their course, is what I'm trying to say.
When an adaptation can pull something of this caliber off for 1 season, let alone 3 in a row, and full-length seasons, no less, which are also fully necessary to doing an epic fantasy tale like this justice. The characters need that time to really live in the world, or die horribly over and over again in the world, as the case may be. The villains and monsters need that time to build themselves up as the properly horrifying, world-shaking threats that they truly are. And of course, it also gives...
I definitely finished that part with the whale, and maybe a little bit after that.
Us time to get immersed and invested in the lore, the magic, the mysteries, the politics, everything that makes Lagunica feel so real. But it's not just the top tier world building that sets ReZero apart from damn near every other isekai and fantasy anime period. It's all of the incredible characters who inhabit that world, possessed of depth and dimensionality to rival the courts and keeps of Westeros.
And even all the light novels and spin-offs are super popular. It's just, for some reason, it's taking them a long time to finish this adaptation.
Depth that is fully necessary to make the story work at all, as Subaru's differing actions in each new time loop force everyone around him to show new facets of their personalities in response, always consistent with who they are at their core. One episode of the first season that is widely considered to be peak television is just two characters having a really good conversation. And I honestly believe that if you set up a similar scenario with Subaru or Emilia and literally any other member of the cast...
Yeah, so I got to, I think his name's Garfield, either right before the battle with Garfield or during, like, that's when I stopped watching.
It would also be peak TV. Through the royal selection at the heart of its main plot, ReZero establishes over a dozen candidates, knights, and attendants who all feel like the fully realized heroes of their own complete stories, some quite a bit more impressive than Subaru. And in a slick narrative flourish, while this is something that initially makes him feel very emasculated and weak, as our protagonist grows, confronts his insecurities, and overcomes his inadequacies, not only does he learn to be friends with all those guys, he finds the self-confidence to step back and share the spotlight or even give it up altogether.
But I think, at least when I watched it, he never really got stronger, he just got smarter, which always made the show more interesting.
Only to Emilia, who fully graduates from damsel to deuteragonist by the end of season 2, but in the latest season, everyone gets a chance to shine in emotional character moments, key plot beats, and in battle against the most delightfully hateable pack of villains in a show that already had the best villains in anime from the very first episode.
I also wouldn't agree with that, but I think ReZero is probably like a top 15, top 20 show. I'll have to finish it, and maybe when I finish season 2 and 3, I might be gushing just as much as he is.
No hesitation, I'd let her kill me. I'd really let her kill me. And her? Honestly, letting her kill me sounds like a mercy compared to the horrors, but even if it wasn't, just... right in the guts, please, ma'am. And if light novel readers are to be believed, all of this has nothing on what's in store for the 4th season, which might just push ReZero to the tippy top of this list if true. But we're not ranking this list on the potential of the adaptation.
Fair enough.
What matters is the anime that's out already. And as of now, I have only seen one other show with a better 3-season run than this, which we'll get to in just a moment. But first, I'd like to shine a spotlight on some honorable mentions. Too many to actually mention out loud, but I'll keep them playing behind me as I address what I'm sure will be the most common criticism of this video, at least from anime old heads, who are gonna look at my list and these clips scrolling by, see basically nothing made before I was born, and cry, recency bias. You don't know ball? Watch more classic anime, whippersnapper, and some tokusatsu while you're at it. To
There's
which I
Ippo.
would counter, first, half of all the anime in existence were made in the last decade or so, and like 85% of them came out after 1990. Plus,
Actually, that's pretty fair, because otherwise you have, I think the 80s is when it really started true, like anime, like Battleship Yamamoto, Gundam, Voltron, even the Transformers, and then stuff like that. So he's not too crazy to say that, unless you want to watch like Hello Kitty or it was something The Lion or whatever. That's another old anime.
it is the nature nature of art to improve over time as creators learn from each other, so the odds are heavily skewed toward anyone's favorites and the best anime in general being more recent. And second, you're absolutely right. I have not watched enough great old anime, or enough great new anime for that matter, even after a decade of doing this for a living, which is something I'd really like to change. And that's why I'm starting up a new podcast, Quest for the Best, with my best buds, Tristan and
Good for him.
where every week we're gonna check out and talk about a new contender for the top 100 greatest anime of all time, as nominated by one of us, or you guys at home sometimes, or our guests, if and when we have guests. You might know Tristan better as the AniTube OG Arcata of Glass Reflection and Podtaku fame, while Miles
Definitely knew him from Podtaku, who he was with Giguk, and Giguk went to do Trash Taste.
is an industry veteran who spearheaded the Anime Awards, Crunchyroll Expo, and a whole lot of other cool stuff back when Crunchyroll actually cared about the anime community. But
True.
more importantly, they're both my favorite guys to hang out and talk anime with, and now you get to hang out with us while we're talking anime every week for free. What a deal! The first episode, in which we talk about Frieren, is already out at the link in the doobly.
The newest gateway anime of all time that has beat Full Metal Alchemist off its pedestal.
Do. So when you're done here, go give that a
I think just in one season, if I remember correctly.
watch and subscribe to Quest for the Best on YouTube or your podcast and platform of choice. But no matter how long that podcast runs for, it is gonna take a hell of a lot to unseat my top pick.
So I know I referenced it earlier on. Mob Psycho was one of the series that made me cry. It might be blasphemous to say it isn't in my top 10, even though I haven't finished season 3. It's just kind of, or even started it for that matter. It's just one of those shows that, you know, when you really enjoy something and then you don't want to watch it because then you know it's over. That's Mob Psycho for me. So completely understand why it would be in a number 1.
I named Mob Psycho 100 my all-time favorite anime 6 years ago, right after season 2 ended with an absolutely insane psychic battle, rivaled only by all the other absolutely insane psychic battles in like every other episode leading up to it. To this day, best fight of 2019 is Mob versus Mogami, Mob versus Suzuki, or everyone taking on Shimazaki. But the show actually cemented its place in my heart long before any of those, at the very start of the season.
It's what got, even though I've let myself go, originally, I think when it first came out, there was the Fitness Improvement Club in Mob Psycho, and that's what originally started to get me to work out and improving myself around that time.
Achingly beautiful moment where Mob uses his powers to miraculously piece back together the torn and scattered dream of a girl who was just trying to bully him. And the thing that makes all of those fights so special isn't the masterful storyboarding, the heart-racing score of Kenji Kawai, or the breathtaking action Sakuga that punctuates every punch and side blast and teleport and vine whip. I mean, it is also that stuff. Man, that stuff is cool. I love that stuff. But more than that, I love how Mob approaches every one of his enemies, no matter how malicious, with empathy and understanding.
I mean, the core of Mob Psycho is, if everybody's special, nobody's special.
How he strives to use insanely cool and beautifully animated supernatural violence only as a means of opening dialogue, because he believes in his heart of hearts that everyone can change. And even though Mob is awkward and timid and capable of throwing an entire city block at a guy just by thinking about it, he wants to change into someone who can use his words, like the man he admires most. The man who almost single-handedly got this incredible anime made, because before he even thought about any of those cool fights, Yuzuru Tachikawa, creator of Death Parade and one of the most acclaimed...
Oh, I didn't know that. He made Another great series, Death Parade.
Anime directors working today felt an irresistible compulsion to animate Reigen Arataka's face when Mob tells him he's a really good guy. Hardcore otaku love to theorycraft about our dream anime adaptations, the perfect director or studio for the perfect source material. You know, Studio Bind's Berserk, Shinichiro Watanabe's Kagurabachi, Yoshiaki Kawajiri's Frank Herbert's Dune, hypothetically ideal anime productions that could never happen in real life, except Mob actually did. The best work of the best writer in the manga space today. A story so good it legitimately changed my life, helmed by a genius director who absolutely unequivocally gets it. A man.
But yet, for his other series, the creator, I think Mob Psycho, I think he goes by Mob, or maybe One, did One Punch Man. And for some reason, first season was great of One Punch Man. And there is a season 3 announcement. For some reason, Mob Psycho got all the love, and then One Punch Man just kind of fell flat.
And who understands how to turn the most potent emotional turning point of the series into a 13 out of 10 episode, the finale of each season into an 11, and
Hype
every
moment.
other episode besides into a certified 10. Backed by one of the only studios that could ever consistently execute on that vision, which may confuse the folks at home who think the show falls off a little when it's too focused on comedy and not being about Claw, but those people don't get it. Mob Psycho 100 isn't a plot-driven shonen battle anime, it's the world's funniest and sometimes saddest slice of life comedy, which just happens to occasionally be interrupted by shonen battles and terrorist attacks sometime. I can see where the confusion comes from, since every one of those battles is executed with a similar level of polish to the hypest moments of JJK, One Punch Man, and Hiroaka combined, even when it's just Mob beaten on jobbers. But that comes alongside slapstick animation to rival Kaguya-sama and Nichijou, tearjerker.
Okay, Nichijou, way funnier than Kaguya-sama, way funnier than One Punch. Mob Psycho, it did have its funny moments, but I always just viewed it, I wouldn't say as a slice of life, but that is a good way of putting it. Again, just really, really good show.
Moments on the same level as Anohana and Orb, and just for good measure, spooky supernatural elements that manage to simultaneously feel genuinely unsettling and still fit that cartoony art style through the ingenious application of mixed media paint-on-glass animation, which I think technically makes this the last traditionally animated thing to ever air on television. That is how hard they went with this show. And while the core plot may not be quite as elegant and compelling a mystery box as, say, FMA, the way it ties together every last one of those genres and ties up every last character's arc in its finale is an even more impressive writing flex in my book. Also, it's got the 3 greatest anime openings ever, like hands down.
Definitely top 3 greatest anime openings of all time. All great bangers. I can't remember the band's name. Mob Choir, maybe. All great songs, both in English and Japanese.
And y'all know how I feel about OPs. Mob Psycho 100 is simply the best anime in every way and on every level. And if you disagree, that's cool. Tell me your top 10 in the comments. Before you go, though, I need to say thank you to Haruhi, naturally, to my dad for being my biggest fan right up to the end, my mom.
Shout out to your family. Love you, Dad. Love your mom. It's great that he's doing this too. Who knows where I'll be in 10 years, you know? Only time will tell. Will I still be doing it? I guess we'll only have to find out.
For use of the basement, and the friends and family who were there for us when we needed it most. To Trey, Adam, Nyes, Jab, Zach, Dylan, Kennedy, Flip, Lachlan, Daniel, Ava, and Mitch for using your editing skills to bring my words to life as videos over the years. To Aaron for being an amazing friend and even better artist. To Maylene, Dominic, Rie, Corey, Connor, Adele, and everyone else at Geeks Plus who's helped make our dream of living in Japan Japan possible, to Matt, Steph, and the whole Game Theory team for giving me a place to hone my writing skills and the utterly invaluable advice that got me where I am today, to the ANN, Metal Gear Marathon, Shonen Flop, One Piece podcast, and Dog Zone 9000 crews for all the good conversations over the years, to Lee for making me believe I could do this, and Steve for giving me no other choice, to Dan and Carrie, Derek and Grace for being great friends and inspirations, Liam, Matt, Wooly, and Pat for making sure I could never stop doing this, John, I couldn't ask for a better shonen rival, to CJ, Ellie, Reagan, Sterling, Jono, Johnny, Monty, Dan, Evan, Matt, Chris, Jake, Keita, Scott, Curtis, Lanny, Izzy, Mac, Shane, George, Austin, Cole, Sungwon, Mike, Bryant, Kevin, Garnt, Sid, Baron, Dakota, Holden, Aaron, Kayla, Jacob, Raina, Brennan, Momoka, Sheena, Feek, Josh, Kate, Emily, Manu, Terrence, Gita, Harry, Casey, Isla, and everyone else who was the real Mother's Basement we made along the way. To
That's super sweet. It's really touching to see him. You don't really see that too much, where he is truly, at least I believe, thanking everyone who's impacted, because unless you do something like this, I kind of believe that you are putting yourself out there. You put a little piece of you out there, even if it is something just like reacting or whatever. It takes a lot, and it's hard sometimes. So it's really touching that he hasn't forgotten where he's come from.
Sadie for bringing me all my Brazilian fans, and of course to you for watching this video and all the other ones. To everyone who's ever left a like or comment or hit that sub button over the years. To everyone in chat, and also a sorry I don't stream more often. To everyone who's ever come up to say hi at a con. Everyone in the Discord and the Phantom Thieves who keep them in line. And especially to all the patrons who've given me not just your eyeballs and kind words, but your precious cold hard cash over the years. This wouldn't have been possible without all of you. But most importantly, I have to thank Yazzie, the best girl to end all best girls.
That's
for
sweet,
pushing
too.
me through the tough times and making the good ones all the better. For making me laugh so hard I can't breathe and taking my breath away in so many other ways. And for being with me through nearly every step of this crazy journey. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out.
That was a great video. That was Mother's Basement's top 10 anime of all time. I do have a video of my top 10 anime where I ranked every anime I've watched. But I want to know, what's your top 10 favorite anime? Or maybe to make it easier, top 3. Let me know down below. As always, thank you for watching. I've been Boog the Goob. May God bless you and peace.